All right. Well, as you may have seen last night, a boil water advisory was in effect for Independence through this morning. And this ties to obviously some issues that they were having with a water treatment plant. Rory Rowland is the mayor of Independence. He's joining us on KCMO. Mr. Mayor, thanks for being here. Where do things stand right now as we hit the 9 o'clock hour?
Good morning, Mr. Mundo. It is great to see you and great to talk to you this morning. As we speak, I believe we're still under the advisory order. That'll probably be released sometime. It's typically once you turn the system on, you're on that for about 24 hours. I have not heard that any of the tests have come back positive with any contaminants in the system. And I would suspect since the pressure stayed up that there wouldn't be any contaminants in the system. That's my supposition. That is not from city staff. So that's what I'm supposing. And I think it will be safe at that point. And then we turned the system on. I don't know if you watched the city council meeting last night, but interim city manager Lisa Reynolds gave us an update right at the beginning of the meeting about what had occurred. We had a power outage at the Courtney Bend treatment plant early yesterday morning. And, you troubleshoot those things and you hope that, in fact, they get fixed quickly. And it was more complicated than we had expected, and it took longer than we expected. So they finally got the switch flipped back on where they had power to the system. And then, of course, it takes a while to turn the system on because you've got all this pressure. You don't want to overwhelm the system and then obviously pop pipes somewhere along the system. You've got to kind of turn it on slowly and do that. So that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of the update that I have at this point.
So what's the best way? I don't know if the interim city manager addressed this last night, but having some kind of a backup system in place. So if something like this were to happen again, the water is not unusable across Independence. Did that come up last night?
It didn't come up in the meeting last night, but under discussions with the interim city manager, what had happened is in the off season, you do maintenance, and we had one of the pumps that was down for maintenance. And so we would typically, in a scenario like that, just flip over to that one.
Got it.
As I understand it, that one was down. So it was one of those scenarios where, perfect storm, you don't have everything lined up for you. So because you don't want to do maintenance on water systems in the peak of summer when people are watering their lawns and things like that, then you plan those things at this time of the year so that with the anticipation that you won't have an issue like this. We did, and here we are. But the good thing is there was no boil order, and there doesn't seem to be one so far put into place. And we should get the all clear, I would suspect, within the next 18 to 24 hours.
Okay, so people have to keep boiling that water potentially for another 18 to 24 hours.
Yeah, it's an advisory. We haven't had any test where we've seen, as of last night, we didn't have any test where we had any contaminants in the system at that point. They just have to turn the system on slowly so that we don't overwhelm, because Kansas City was kind enough to interconnect with us to keep our pressure up. So they shared water with us. And you've got to then kind of, when you turn the system back on, turn it on slowly so you don't overwhelm their system and then backflow into their system and cause them to go into boiler advisory at the same time.
Okay.
So it's a pretty complex system, and you want to be kind to your neighbors who help you out in that time of need.
Do the schools and the courts and everything else, they've got what they need today to operate fully?
Yes, the schools went back into school today. The courts are back in session today. So everything should be up and running today. I turned on water, I drank it, and everything looked good. So I think we're up and running and just waiting to the system to stabilize, get our final test so that we can then go off of the boil advisory.
Okay. And then handling in the wake of it yesterday, I did hear some criticism across Independence of folks saying, hey, it felt like leadership in Independence didn't get out in front of this thing well enough yesterday. How would you respond to any criticism on that front?
That's a fair question. What we're going to do as a council, we talked about that. We're going to go, kind of do a game plan analysis of it. Go back and kind of watch. They would like you would watch film in an NFL game. We're going to go back and say, okay, what happened here? What occurred there? My suspicion is this, in looking at it, is it's a complex scenario, and you don't want to pull the ripcord at 6:30 when you don't know the extent of the outage, because then if you call that, then you call school, and then in fact it was a 15-minute fix. You go back in and you call school when you in fact have water back on. So it's almost a darned if you do, darned if you don't scenario. We'll look at that and see that situation, but that's a great question. It's a question that many of my council members expressed to me during the process. We're certainly going to talk about that and look at that and see which is the best way for us to do an analysis on how that occurred and what's the best way to make sure that we notify folks in the future. And just the question of, can we get, the emails of we don't have all the emails of our water customers, so that if something like that occurred, we could do that, or maybe the text messages of our water customers, so that we could send them text messages and emails. And so this is an opportunity for us to look at those systems, start to ask for that data, collect that data, and then if something like that happens. But one of the things that's important to kind of look at in this regard is, our system has been very, very productive for over 40 years that I've lived in Independence. My wife and I moved there in 81. And if I'm correct, and this is going off of my memory and not anything from the facts from staff or anything like that, but we've only had 2 boil advisories that I know of in my lifetime and never had a boil order. So it's been a really safe and productive system. So, we've been, knock on wood, and hopefully we continue to have that. But it's a question of, just making sure it works and making sure that we as city leaders go back and game plan and say, okay, what occurred? How can we get better? And what did we learn from this? And certainly, we hate to see this happen for schools and courts to be out of session. That's not what we want. We want to provide a service that you never think about city government. That's what we want.
Yeah.
That everything works, and you never think about city government, and it just works.
Rory Rowland, the mayor of Independence on KCMO. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. We appreciate the time, and we will talk to you soon.
You bet. Thank you.
All right. There you go.